Alright, so picking up where we last left off there, had a little sidetrack. Uh, pick up on that a little bit later though. Um, and on top of that, I got distracted. So let me just go ahead and continue so I can make this part two and wrap up where we were at here. So, my apologies about all that. I hope everything's in order. On the part one, we left off here on the Juris Civilis, the Code of Justinian, was rediscovered in northern Italy, 1070 again, and became widely admired later in the Middle Ages. This Just to kind of do a backtrack, if you're just hopping in, belly flopping into part two, here we're talking about the Middle Ages. We're breaking down right now the different terms, these code words called the ages. We have the Middle Ages or the medieval period. We just recently just looked over uh, late antiquity. I'm sorry about that, y'all. Late antiquity here and covered that and what that really means in the context of the Middle Ages. We hit upon the imagery here, and you can see the little ball here too if you didn't notice. Um, you know, uh, right now we're going back through and just trying to get a better understanding when we are talking about parallel timelines, when we are talking about let's see here the the way that these hijacked timelines fall within certain dates. It is the assertion. I'm gonna slide that over a little bit, y'all. The assertion is that um, 1400s when a lot of this wacky stuff went down. 1200 to 1400s is really where it gets a little muddied, a lot muddied actually. And I agree with that. I'm just coming from a different perspective, thinking that um, this here, the history of Judah, is probably the real, and this is the hijack here of the Eastern Roman Empire. Um, Especially when you take in the context of them trying to erase us from the history books, you take into context Prester John, how he's an historian Christian, and it has all this Christian hijack, and then uh, uh, and how these phantom timelines and dynasties are taking place. Real quick, Brother Hiram Mark helped us out with the reading. I apologize, Brother Hiram. It's on this video here. Negroes at the Pentecost. We are the Ashkenazi, not the Ashkenazi. I'm having a brain fart on the actual. Having a brain fart on the actual name of the book he's reading out of. But if you go check him out, you much appreciate it. Check him out. We're at the 55-minute mark. Is where I started this, and this is an introduction out of the book he's reading, and how the Canaanites or the Assyrians or the whites, no one was there. There was no white people at the day of Pentecost, and how the Canaanites or the whites or the Assyrians, you're all worshiping these Greek gods, and these are the not just Greek gods, but the Pantheon gods, and these gods here, are being worshipped today. Um, and I agree with that. Um, but I agree with that to the point where it's going to feed back into the point of, I think this here, despite the date of it being older, which it possibly um, is the indigenous truth, and over here is the um, hijack truth, as far as the Eastern Roman Empire. Okay, so when we're going through here, we're going through and talking about the Middle Ages. Where we last left off here, we left off here with the Corpus Juris Civilis, or the Code of Justinian, was rediscovered. Okay, rediscovered. All right. Now, I have to, if y'all haven't noticed, but it's very rare that they admit when that something was written prior to them and they rediscovered it. You know, I like that meme going around on Facebook. Forget the brother's name. It's a funny video, a little 10-minute shot of he's saying, white folks need to stop saying that they discovered shit. It's like me walking into a fire talking about something I discovered hot noodly soup. you know, the thing's been around for quite some time. So they don't admit this. So it's been rediscovered. So and it was rediscovered again in northern Italy in 1070 and became widely admired later in the Middle Ages. So with the hijack here and the timeline and stuff like that, we know that you know this is possibly a projection. And it probably had nothing to do with this Justinian at all. Okay, just based upon what we've learned so far. So let's go through this here real quick. Let's see here. In the West, most kingdoms incorporated the few extant Roman institutions. Monasteries were founded as campaigns to Christianize pagan Europe. Continued. Okay, let's reread that again. Ages. Okay. In the West, most kingdoms incorporated the few extant Roman institutions. Monasteries were founded as campaigns to Christianize pagan Europe. Okay. Continued. Okay. The Franks, that's your Gauls, under the Carolingian dynasty, okay, briefly established the Carolingian Empire during the later 8th and 9th century. It covered most of Western Europe, but later succumbed to the pressures of internal civil wars combined with the external invasions. Vikings from the north, Hungarians from the east, and good old Saracens from the south, right? And why is that important that we notate the directions of influence? Okay, number one, our maps are not right. So if you're in Europe, you have the Vikings coming from the north. What we understand of how the map works, well, what's north of Europe other than the North Pole, right? Then you got the Hungarians from the east. Okay, isn't this where you get your Chans and stuff, your Khans? And then from the south, we get what? We get the Saracens from the south. Notice the cardinal direction that you don't have is the west. Okay. Now, Saracens to the south, right? Now, when was this taking place? Uh, Around 1070. And as we know, with dumb diverses. Hold on, let me get my keyboard up the way. I'm kind of ashamed of myself. I should have it memorized as many times as we pulled the dumb diverses. That's just me, y'all. That's just me. That's just me being hard on myself. So don't think I'm being a jerk towards y'all. All right, Papal Bull, dumb diverses. What? We grant you kings of Spain and Portugal by these present documents with the apostolic authority, full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate, enslave the who? Saracens and who? Pagans. Okay. Now I find it funny here, as we break down the truth of the matter when it comes down to these gods who they call pagans, um, and and then after or through hijack, who's called heathens, and then pagans. But blurred timelines here, uh, it can get confusing real quick because those who were pagans, um, you know, are now labeled as Christians, but everything that's Christian is pagan. you know, so again, that's that word magic wordplay, and obviously timeline play as we understand this big dude over here. Um, so we understand them by verses. We're at the Middle Ages, right? Yeah. Okay. Um, and now one of the things when we're doing this little jump back through the timelines is, and at least you'll notice a lot of these video authors who point out is um, these names and titles. Um, these names and titles is getting us in a lot of trouble, and not not in a bad sense, just in a sense of confusion. Um, you know, we know the Franks are the Gauls, but do many people know that the the Galatians is the same as the Franks, is the same as Gaul? No, I don't think a lot of people do, and they don't put it together. Um, so, or look at a map, or read a book. But but we gotta get out of that habit. So this is why we gotta get off that 440 frequency and letting them tell us everything. Let's just get to the indigenous truth of the matter. These Gauls, these Franks, it's all the same thing. The Galatians, all the same thing. So when they say Saracens, they're talking about Jews for the most part. Okay, indigenous for the most part as well. During the High Middle Ages, which began after 1000, the population of Europe increased greatly as technological and archaeological innovations allowed trade to flourish, and the medieval warm period climate change allowed crops to yields to increase. Right. So remember when they came over here and found you, Negro, so-called Negro, they were on their last leg. They were starving. Um, they were desperate, rough times. Now, I'm going to stop right here for now. You guys can continue to learn more about how this really all breaks down as far as the ages are concerned. Now, this is just what the Middle Ages, okay? We will go back into it. I'm pretty sure I'll pull this back up a couple of times because it actually does have some pretty good drop in here. Okay, you need to understand periodization, the terminology, and this is what we're talking about here. Okay, now check this out. Now, this is what, again, we're looking at the Middle Ages. Okay, so let's go to, we saw late antiquity, covered that. Okay, we need to dig a little bit deeper on on the Corpus Juris Civilis. Um, you know, just based upon look, that just based upon what we know, uh, this probably is all hijacked, you know, iconoclast and all that other good type of stuff. Okay, so dig on that. Um, Now we're gonna look at the Dark Ages real quick. Okay, now the Dark Ages is a historical periodization, right, during the what Middle Ages, characterized by relative scarcity of historical and other written records, at least for some areas of Europe, rendering it obscure to historians. This is what I'm talking about when I say that I don't think that everything is a projection backwards in time. I think that they took what they knew and then project some of that information forward in time to create these gaps. Okay, this Eastern Roman Empire, these excuses because they didn't have the information. The Dark Ages is a historical periodization during the Middle Ages characterized by what? A relative scarcity of historical and other written records. Okay? Okay? Very clear on that. Alrighty. Now, let's see here. The Dark Ages supposedly included demographic, cultural, and economic deterioration in Western Europe following the decline of the Roman Empire. The term Dark Ages employs traditional light versus darkness imagery to contrast the darkness of the period with earlier and later periods of what? Light. Lucifer, Luke Ethiopians, white Ethiopians, the checkerboard. These are the different these terms we got to be careful of. If you guys have been staying up on it, Brother King Drop hit you guys up with the definition of black, and y'all calling yourselves black. Y'all need to stop that because you guys are calling yourself something. You're taking on something that isn't true to you, to what how the Creator made you, and you need to fix that. And obviously, again, a lot of stuff just has to do with getting your head right. You know, it's funny, but when you confront somebody with indigenous truth, they don't bother you. All of a sudden, you if they can't convince you to get back into the programming, you become Prester John. You become invisible. I mean, literally. They don't approach you that way, and you're better off ignored. Okay. In any case, the Dark Ages were once characterized as being the majority of the Middle Ages, or roughly from what the 6th to the 14th centuries. So from the 500s to the 1300s. Okay. Now let's go back. The Middle Ages is from what? The 5th to the 15th century. Okay. So only 100 years before and 100 years after is the Middle Ages or the medieval period that isn't dark. Okay. And then we were talking about 1,000 years either way. But this is what I was talking about where the Dark Ages runs parallel to the Middle Ages. They're synchronized, but due to periodization, they are different. Um, Again, this is a historical periodization during the Middle Ages. Okay, um, let's see here. The Dark Ages is one. Now remember, notice what's being said here. Then we're gonna go back and compare it back to the Middle Ages. What's being said there? The only difference is 100 years on both the beginning and the end. Okay. All right. Let's see here. The Dark Ages were once characterized as being a majority. Yeah, that's what I just described. The Dark Ages were once characterized as being the majority of the Middle Ages, or roughly the 6th to the 14th century. So from the 500s to the 1300s, as a period of intellectual darkness between the extinguishing the light of Rome after the end of late antiquity, and we just covered that, and the rise of the Italian Renaissance in the 14th century. Now, you hear their own words, okay? How is this possible that these people were ignorant, okay? Ignorant, dark. They had intellectual darkness, okay? The information received from Rome, the light of Rome was what? Extinguished during what? This time period. Now, let's go back to the Middle Ages. All right. So, if these people were so stupid, right? Where's all this information coming from? I'm just asking. If all this is bullshit, because in the Dark Ages they were ignorant, they didn't have the light of Rome, right? are they admitting in our face that they don't know what really happens between when? They don't know what happens between the 600s, right? The 6th century, so 500s to 1300s. They're clueless because it was what? The Dark Ages. During what? In the Middle Ages. Back the ancient kingdom of Judah, 600 BC to 0, the Eastern Roman Empire, 300 to 700. We know from what they say in the history books, the standard histories, that what happened. They fell. Now, this all goes um, this all goes into. Don't think that this is separate. Let me say it that way. Don't think that this is separate from the search for Prester John, because it's not. It's all together because it's about you. You being invisible in history. You not being a human being. You are a monster by definition of maritime law. Okay, they came off the boat. So I just want you to be clear on these certain terms. Now, on one, they saying these motherfuckers was ignorant. On the other side, we see these motherfuckers weren't that ignorant. It was just a transitional time period, and they grew and they developed, and they it was the they did have population decline and counter urbanization and invasion, and then it goes on to the migration period, and the flowery shit, the shit that they tell us in school, of how great these people are. This is the hijack, in my opinion, compared to the truth of the time period, the Dark Ages. But there's a little wordplay on here, because what do we know during the Middle Ages? What have you been dealing with in Europe? You've been dealing with the Byzantine, the Mohammedans, the melanated Muslims, the melanated people there, bringing people, teaching people, the Moors, developing Europe, you know, enlightening them. But that's that wordplay, okay? So this is the type of stuff that we got to be careful and understand what they mean by these things, okay? I want to continue on because I think my time is short. I think I do got to get going here. Let's see here. So check out the stuff in here. We're gonna get into, and the reason why is because we're coming across and learning that with the blurring of the timelines, a lot of the stuff here is just all jacked up. Oh, wow, I'm glad I saw that. And I also want to bring in the point of these current, the way that they do it. It appears, especially when you have like time periods like the Reformation, right, or during the Reformation time period. When we get to the point where we are now, where there's a lot of information out there, and people are starting to come into the truth and starting to put pictures together. You'll notice throughout the history books, there's almost like a doubling down or like a backfeed of information to reinforce the original lie with modern truth. I think that's the best way I can say that. An example of that would be, I wonder if I can pull one up real quick. An example, I think I can. An example would be, let me just show you here, is the, what is this? I think I showed this in another video, or I think I was going to cover this elsewhere, and it got deleted, but, what's the term? Yeah, Jewish Christian, right? Okay. Why am I bringing this up? This isn't nothing new. far as these Jewish Christians or also Hebrew Christians or Judeo Christians. Um, what winds up happening here is you will hear people, and I've even suggested listening to them, like a Rob Skiba. Again, you got to get the babies out there with the bathwater because he comes with a very Christian bent. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have good information there. But what's going on here is these modern Christians are no longer no longer calling Jesus Jesus because videos that's been coming out and truths that's been coming out that you guys worship Jesus. There is no J. So now they're trying to, and instead of it just being the truth of the matter that you added the J, because the J just was created, and this is Isus, one of the pillars of the boatman. Uh, Now all of a sudden, his name is no longer. You want to use the Hebrew name for Jesus, which don't add up to what it really is. But this is the difference between translation and transliteration. This is where now all of a sudden it's Yeshua. They call him Yeshua. So they're doing this strong Hebrew backfeed, circling back to kind of double down on this whole Christian thought because it's falling apart. So you got to keep the lie going, and they don't know no better, but that's okay. That's their own judgment. Again, I'm following Psalms 1:1. Tell these people what it is and get out their way. So let's see here. Were the original members of the Jewish movement that later became Christianity. In the early stages, the community was made up of all those Jews who accepted Jesus as a venerable person or Messiah, Christos. As Christianity grew and evolved, Jewish Christian became only one strand of the early Christian community. Okay, this whole paragraph is wrong. Okay, it just is. I don't have to. For me to accept this paragraph would be to accept the work, was solely the work of all of these girls that came before me making this video that already blasted this out of the water in so many different ways. But it is babies in the bathwater is back what we were talking about before with the syncretism, us being part of mixture, yada yada yada. They wear us like clothes, like body snatchers, and this, that, and the other. So, what you come to find out here is that what really happened in the early time. This is why we go back to Philo. What happened? Well, you have Philo, my man up there, my man Philo, right? So Philo, a man of mystery. Right? Dude Philo, right? He's the one that's responsible, being the apex of Greek and Jewish thought philosophy. But he's the one that takes this, our Jewish or Hebraic understanding, and merges, synchronizes, syncretism with the Hellenistic or Greek thought. When we look at the history at that point in time, Philos describes in his works, and y'all can check this dude out, but he describes in his works, excuse me, y'all, sorry. He describes in his works, those works, what was going on during the time period, how there was beef between him and between Caligula, and you start reading these stories about what happened during this time period. He has some very pertinent information, but it was about the people that lived there. Now, according to the history book, the description is only given of two peoples. That's plural, peoples. Okay, the Greek, and then the Jew.
or the Hebrew. Now, anyone who studied Ptolemy knows that, or basic geography, that there's more than just Hebrews and Greeks there, in a sense. Um, we're talking about less than 100 years, but we see this in modern day with America, right? The Team Dropout forgot the link. I know it's even for some odd reason I have the hardest time pulling it up, but it's the old dictionary, 1913, 1918, where America means native native copper colored races, and all of a sudden is anybody born here. Well, you kind of got the same thing going on in Greece. About 100 years prior with Ptolemy, who we keep bringing up on these videos, we keep coming across. Um, Ptolemy is the Greek who runs Egypt. So, what happened in 100 years to the Egyptians? If by the time we get to Philo, there are only Egyptians and Hebrews, I mean, Greeks and Hebrews, what happened to the Egyptians? Did they disappear? And this is why I thought it was really fascinating. Thought it was really fascinating when we get to what? Why the Ethiopians? And here it is. Ptolemy himself, there you go, is talking about what? White Ethiopians. Okay. They believe that they were all up in this area. Okay. And then when we get to somewhat down in here, into it, we start digging into it. Here it is, right? The 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 Luke, the Luke Ethiopians, or literally white Ethiopians, okay, could also Smith suggests be described as white black men. Since ancient times, the term Ethiopian referred to skin color. Okay, and then I'm sorry I lost it, but this is what Paul when you talk about graham crackers. That's what we call them. They black on the outside, but they got a white mind, right? Um, you know, so what is he really? And to uh, I think this guy's name is Richard Smith, who's breaking this down. Yeah, it is Richard Smith. Again, he's one of these cats that we also gotta hold accountable. You know, it seems or it would appear, that he's trying to correct the timeline. He's trying to take the information and correct things versus continuing the hijack. But you'll come across these names just like we have the people in history. You're going to come across people like Pliny the Elder. You're going to come across Pliny the the younger. You're going to come across Ptolemy. You're going to come across it. I don't even know how it's pronounced. IBN, Ibn, how call or something like that. There he is, right there. You'll come across this guy's name a lot. So, just going back, you know, it's very important. This whole breaking down the timeline, the ages, and what they really mean. We have 1,000 years where these people, accordingly, in the Dark Ages, were dumb as hell. But when we read about Philo, okay, in the Septuagint, it was written by who? The Septuagint was written by 70 Jews who knew a lot of Koine Greek, right? But they didn't know a lot of Hebrew. I mean, I think this is fascinating that we use, and this is the gold medal standard of the indigenous truth, the Septuagint. Now, to Philo's credit, was he trying to fix the history, or is he a player, or was he a part of the problem? I think he was part of the problem. Now, was he aware that he was a part of the problem? Who knows? Hell, Manchurian Candidate, right? Hypnosis, complete hypnosis. Who knows? But um, you see this comes up where they didn't know shit about Hebrew, and then I'm gonna take that back to where, but they use that to create everything else. It's upon the Septuagint, okay, that we get all this extra stuff. This is what all this extra stuff is built on, right? And then we come into the Middle Ages, the timelines, everything blurred, right? Dumb diverses, these admixtures. Now, let me see if I can, excuse me, break this down. I'm sorry, y'all. I think I need some coffee or something because right now I'm drinking this grape juice and water, and it just ain't been acting right within me a little bit, getting the gas out of my system. So excuse me for the coughing and burping. But then when we, when we compare what's going on with the Septuagint, as far as the timeline hijack is concerned, we come across what Philo is associated with Septuagint. He's associated with these 70 Jews who helped create the Septuagint. But then when we skeet up in the timeline by 250 years, and then get to one of his namesakes of this Theophilus. Oh man, come on, tripping with me. There we go. Right. Oh no! Don't tell me. Oh, I'll have to fix that later. I don't know why it did me like that. My bad, y'all. I lost my internet connection here for a brief second in time. Okay, now we back. All right. All right, and then when we go on to what was it, Theophilus, right? It was Os. I'm almost certain it was Theophilus. Theophilus. Where was it? Specific Theophilus. Oh, I know what it was. Pope. That's what it was. Pope Theophilus. Right. Of where? Alexandria, right? Yeah, this guy was a beast. He was beast in history. Okay. And then this guy here, he's associated with the 70 saints. You know, just really weird mixing of timelines. But all this doesn't make sense until you start understanding how this guy works, how his family works, how his family operates, and then how this is projected onto the beliefs and the worship of this principality is projected on the physical realm, the realm in which we live, the actual physical timeline, the history. Um, you know, who are these Egyptians? Where are the Egyptians when we're talking about? Because they were very clear when you talk about the Septuagint and stuff like that, and Philo, they're very clear that there's only Greek and Egyptian. But then when we look up in the white Ethiopian, you'll see a couple of different things mentioned. You have the white Ethiopian, the white Egyptian, the white Libyan, the Libyan Egyptian, and how these people like Richard Smith are saying that what we understand today as these people, if we project back, should have been known to these people who are